This is our moment. This is our time.
Haven't we heard this somewhere before?
This is our time.
It's not hard to understand why people around the world are so critical of their governments.
Where did you find these peckerwoods?
And it's real easy to understand how so many of you are tempted to give up on your interest in politics because you think that your patriotism just doesn't matter anymore.
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
What you need is a little food for thought and a chance to make up your own mind.
Okay, let's make this quick. I got a hot dog in the microwave.
So, buckle up and get ready to hear some opinions and observations that you won't find in the mainstream media, which are brought to you from people here in the United States and from around the world.
Watch your language, you bud. We're on the air.
I'm Justin Oldham, and you are listening to the Politics and Patriotism Show here on the Stitcher Smart Radio Network. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another thoughtful edition of the Politics and Patriotism Show. We like to talk about personal accountability and self-reliance, most often in a social or a political context. But today, I'd like to bring you a conversation I recently had with author and off-the-grid expert Dan Martin. His new book is called Apocalypse: How to Survive a Global Crisis, courtesy of Echo House Publishing, circa 2012. And he's going to address this issue from a survival point of view. How are you personally accountable? How are you self-sufficient in a crisis when the power goes off, or if something completely and totally unforeseen, like an earthquake or a hurricane or a tornado, pops up? Any of these things. Now, sometimes you will hear people talking about the 2012 Mayan prophecies or the Martians landing or any number of other things that may seem outlandish to you, but remember that it's no laughing matter when infrastructure fails. What are you going to do when there's no more go juice in the car and there's no more electricity in the wall socket? Well, this is what Dan is here to talk about today. So if you would please tune your browser to apocalypsethebook.com so you can follow along with most of our conversation here and get ready to learn a few things that you may not have known about personal accountability and self-reliance when the power goes out.
My name is Dan Martin, author of Apocalypse: How to Survive a Global Crisis. Where can I start? I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I grew up till I was about 13, and then I moved up into the Rocky Mountains, northern Utah, way up in a cabin. Lived there until about 17 or so. I joined the Navy. Lived in Hawaii for a little bit, and then I was shipped off to Desert Storm. While in the Navy, I studied physics and got a degree in psychology and sociology. Went to pre-med. Came out, volunteered with Habitat for Humanity, Greenpeace. And then I got my degree in structural dynamics and fluid dynamics from UTSA and went to work as an engineer for Boeing Aerospace and the Air Force in San Antonio, Texas. And it was kind of then that I realized that I didn't really want to be part of society anymore. I would, I was sitting in a line, I think, or on hold on a phone, and with a I don't know, credit card operator or something, and they had me on hold for like 30 or 40 minutes or something with the music playing, and I had the little timer on your phone, how long you've been on the phone. And I said, how long are they going to keep me on hold here? Most people hang up and call back again. I said, I'm going to stay on the phone and do a little test here and see how long they're just going to leave me on here. And I stayed on the phone for 2 hours and 17 minutes before somebody finally picked up and said, I'm sorry, who are you waiting for? And I said, blah, 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 with blah, blah. And they said, sure, no problem, please hold. And it was then that I just said, that's it. I'm not going to waste my life waiting in lines at Walmart and in traffic to go to work and on hold with such and such operator, and I'm not going to do it. So I left society. First, I went down to Mexico where I met my wife and got married down there, lived there for about a year. Then I bought a large ranch in West Texas, and me and her by ourselves built and sustained a completely off-the-grid homestead, and with solar power, wind power, composting, rain catchment systems. We had no TV, no phone, no bank accounts, no wallet, no alarm clocks, no bills, no debt, no mortgage, no insurance, no kind of expenses of any kind. We had livestock, we had hydroponics, no mail, no internet, no calendars. Wasn't punching a clock. Just a carefree lifestyle, no stresses, no anxiety. We did this for 8 years. It took us 2 years to build the house and the barn and all the goat houses and everything. And then for 6 years, complete, the entire 6 years, we didn't see not one other person. We didn't talk to not one other person. We didn't see anybody. We didn't leave our ranch one time. And so the book, Apocalypse: How to Survive a Global Crisis, it's kind of an accumulation of all this experience that we had on the ranch and how to, survive on your own. Since then, we left the ranch about 5 years ago. Since then, I formed a nonprofit organization called Agua Luna. That's Agua, AGUA-Luna, LUNA.com. And people can go on there and see the photo galleries and stuff of all the places we've been. We've been all over South America and Peru, Argentina, Chile, Honduras, Mexico. Was in New Orleans after flooding. Was in Haiti after the earthquake. Went to Japan, and we just do relief work now to countries that went through some kind of catastrophe. So between our experiences of how to sustain yourself and how to survive on your own with completely independent from society and our first response on catastrophic events, it was an accumulation of all that life experience that went into the book and how to survive not only a major apocalyptic event that could happen either this year or next year and 20 years from now, but also individual events that happen every day. I mean, an earthquake just happened this morning up in New England. You had all these tornadoes that were hitting in the Middle East last summer. You had this tropical storm Debbie that dumped so many feet of rain over Florida and Louisiana in May. So I mean, there's catastrophic events that happen every day, and people need to know, how to handle them and help themselves, because FEMA and the government and the police and the fire department, they're not doing it. The people that were in New Orleans, they sat on those rooftops for almost 2 weeks without any help. So that's where we're at now. And I'm just doing seminars and lectures and interviews like this and speaking events, just trying to get the book out to the people. This month, actually, October, the Travel Channel, they have a show that just came out called Paranormal Paparazzi on the Travel Channel, and they did a episode with me and the ranch and our lifestyle out there, so people can view that this month. So
one of the things that I see as I look at your website here, apocalypsethebook.com, is the value of education, because everything that you talked about in your school background makes a lot of this possible, because knowledge is power. And you've clearly put your education to some very large scope, large scale uses here.
Right. Yeah, and not just the physics and sociology and psychology. I went to community colleges and got free classes on welding and woodworking and first aid, and like I said, I went to pre-med. Took firefighting and anything that I could learn, sewing and cooking, anything that I could learn. And these are things that our grandparents knew, our great grandparents. They knew all these things, but now we depend on everybody else to do everything for us. Automotive mechanics on our car, people mow our lawn, they fix our plumbing, they fix our roofing. Anything I could learn. I was down in Mexico doing concrete work, with the Mexicans, just almost for free, just to learn how to work with concrete and rebar. So yeah, education is definitely my first suggestion when people tell me, what should I do to survive, some kind of event or apocalypse? And I just say, educate yourself. Do anything you can to learn the basics of life, which we should already know anyway.
Now, it's been said that behind every great man is a great woman, and when it comes to education, your wife is no slouch either. So tell us a little bit about her.
She has her PhD in computer science. She was an engineer for AT&T, and I was an engineer for Boeing. She speaks 5 or 6 languages. Let's see, French, Spanish, of course, English, Portuguese, Italian 6. So yeah, she's definitely. I could not have done anything without her. Everything that we did together 100%. And not many women, would just, pick up, leave her country, leave a very high paying career, leave her friends, her family, all her possessions, and just leave society, especially somebody that's brought up and educated in a society based world. I mean, it's hard enough for me. But
I have known a lot of writers who will go and immerse themselves in a subject because they've decided that eventually they want to put pen to paper and they want to talk about that thing. And then there are also the people that simply write what they know simply because they've done it. And it looks to me like you are pretty much in that second group. And as I did my homework for the show, I couldn't help but notice that you're the author of quite a few other books along these lines. And so I'd like to just take a moment to remind our audience that as we're looking at apocalypsethebook.com, that Dan Martin has other things in the mix you should go out there and have a look at. But as we're looking at apocalypsethebook.com, I am curious about one thing here, because there's one thing I don't see on your breakdown for all this, and that is a larger collection of YouTube videos. You and I were talking about off the air a few minutes ago about the trailer for your book, and I'm just curious to know, do you have a collection of YouTube videos that shows people how to do all this stuff?
I don't. I did a few of them. I did. I shouldn't say I don't have any. I just mean I don't have a large collection of them. I did a few, but it just took so much, energy and resources and time and editing and to get that information in a video format that I was going at the time. I was jumping from this country to that country, doing lectures and seminars at this university and workshops in there and projects over here, that I always wanted to get this stuff on video. Actually, I have a producer from CNN that I'm kind of working with right now, that we may be doing something where we go through all these different projects. You kind of touched on this a minute ago. At agua-luna.com, you can go there and see all the different guides I have on how to make your own hydroponics, how to make your own rain catchment system, how to make your own biodigester, how to make your own compost toilet, how to make your own hydrogen generator so you can turn water into fuel, ethanol, biodiesel. You name it, it's in there. And so this producer, we might be doing something where we go through and just do all these projects again and do actually show on them. I would love to do more video stuff. It's just that it just takes a lot more than what I could do at the time.
I can understand that entirely. Now, the second half of your book, Apocalypse: How to Survive a Global Crisis, is devoted to an explanation, breakdown step by step of how to do a lot of these things, and there are some very useful pictures in there. And that, to me, is the real value of this book, because we're talking about education, and it's one thing to understand why you should do something. It's a whole nother matter to understand the how that this can be done. And I think our listeners will find your book useful because it takes the scare factor out of a lot of this stuff, because you've got more than 50 tasks and 50 things you can do outlined in the second half of this book, step by step, with a lot of pictures that show you what the thing looks like at different points in the process. And it's the demystification of most subjects that I find is actually the hardest thing to do when you're trying to make your pitch for something. And I tend to deal in more abstract concepts: democracy, liberalism, conservatism, things like this. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of survival, how do you build a toilet? How do you make a rain catcher? How do you build basic shelter? Because there are so many more point-specific things that have to be done. That's where you get into the value of projects like this and the other books that you've done. Because, for the reason you've just mentioned, we're such an interconnected society today. We have so many people to do all these other things that we've decided we don't have to know how it's done.
Right, exactly. And the book, like you said, the book is, I mean, it starts low. It starts, basically just, I mean, it doesn't, halfway through the book where we're talking about doing it yourself, it starts low, as in just getting water and getting, fruits and berries and how to kill an animal and whatnot. But then it gets into some higher technical things like how to make electricity and how to make, grow food and have nice places and stuff, because that's really what it's about. It's not a book on just surviving. There's lots of survival manuals out there, and I'm not trying to teach anybody how to go out in the woods and build a lean-to and use a hatchet to chop down a tree. I didn't do that. I don't have any experience in that. When I lived off the grid, I didn't live in a cave with candles. I had a big screen TV. We had DVD player. Even though we didn't have TV, we watched a lot of movies. I had a swimming pool in my living room. I had blender. We had margaritas. I mean, we made our own strawberries. We distilled our own alcohol with ethanol. I lived very, very comfortably. I probably lived more comfortably than most Americans do. So that's not what I'm trying to tell you. Just to, leave society or to survive an event doesn't have to be going back to caveman stuff. You can live very comfortably, especially with the tools and technology that we have today.
I'm Luke Herbert, and this program is supported by SpaceNetRadio.com.
That's very true. I can back up what you say simply by pointing out that I live in Alaska, and as much as we love it up here, we also have plenty of reasons to fear this environment. We have the same big box stores that they have anywhere else. We got Walmart and Sam's Club and Pizza Hut and Taco Bell and Regal Cinemas. We've got all of these things. But when the weather is really bad, if one ship doesn't come into the port of Anchorage, we feel it. If one train doesn't make it through the snowy mountain passes to the city of Fairbanks, then we feel it. If one cargo plane loaded with prescription medicine is not allowed to land somewhere in the state because of whiteout conditions, then we all feel it. And so it makes us a bit more thoughtful, and we tend to do exactly a lot of what you're talking about. It's basic preps. It's not the really paranoid stuff. We're not trying to put 10,000 years of stuff in our basement. We're just trying to be smart.
Yeah, and see, nobody knows what you're talking about. They have no idea, what that anybody could live like that. These people are living in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Texas and California, and they just have no clue what, the type of things you're explaining, because that just doesn't happen. But it could, and it does. They just did actually this month or something. I saw this thing on the news that said they're doing a great shakeout of 2012. Have you heard about this?
Yes, I have, but please elaborate.
I don't know too much about it. It's this. It's just kind of a preparedness drills that they're doing in, I think, let me see, California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Arizona, Alaska, basically the Southeast. I mean, all over the world, and just kind of preparing people. I think, let me see, 19 million people participating in this drill to what to do if there's an earthquake in your area for 2012. I just find it very mysterious and suspicious that, why didn't we do it in 2011? Why didn't we do it in 2010? Why not 2013? Why all of a sudden worldwide we're preparing for earthquakes, worldwide earthquakes, for 2012? It's just kind of suspicious. But
Okay, I've got my own theory on this, and it boils down to economics. And what I've seen in my lifetime so far is that when the economies are humming along, when everybody's fat and happy, the government is also flush with cash, and so they're rather eager to step out there and tell you, hey, wait for us. Whenever there's a problem, we'll step out here and fix it. But when times get lean and people are not so fat and not so happy, and the government is having to contend with deficits and shortages of its own, then all of a sudden they're quick to tell us, hey, be a little bit more self-reliant, do a little bit more for yourself, because we might not get to you as fast as we would like. So that's my theory on this.
Well, and that's what I was trying to point out, is that if something happens, and it will happen, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at, if you're in Idaho or Oregon or California or Washington, Alaska, something's going to happen. People will start experiencing what you experience on a daily basis. The C-van didn't come in, the airplane didn't get in with your prescription drugs, and they're going to start feeling it then. I mean, in what was it, March or something, we had wildfires in Montana, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. I mean, just everywhere. Usually have like wildfires in Texas and I don't know, maybe California or something, but everybody had wildfires. And then all the tornadoes there was tornadoes up in New York and Michigan and stuff, just weird places that don't usually have tornadoes. And then these hurricanes and earthquakes. And so it doesn't matter where you live, being self-reliant, it can't hurt. It can't hurt. I'm telling you, go out, get an education. You don't have to buy my book, but buy some book, get some book, read something and learn something. That's all I'm saying. And like you said, I'm not trying to strike fear in anyone. I'm not trying to, wield fear around, but I look at my book or education or being a little bit self-prepared as just another insurance policy. You have insurance on your house, you have insurance on your car, you have insurance on your kids, you have insurance on probably your cell phone, your boat. We have all kinds of different insurances. But if something happens to take away society for a brief point in time or a long term of time, all those insurances that you paid for so many years are gone. They're not going to pay out. They don't exist anymore. And so, kind of put a little insurance back into yourself. I mean, isn't, the lives of your wife and your kids and their safety, isn't it worth it? A few $100 extra bucks? I think so. I would think so. I'd hope so.
Now, as I'm looking at agua-luna.com, I can see the pictures of the ranch here, and this is no third world hovel. This is something that you mentioned that you're in the process of selling. Nobody's going to give you $1.50 for this place. It's going to go for some serious coin because there was some serious effort put into it. And I'd like to encourage people to go and have a look at it because it demonstrates that you don't have to do half measures. You don't have to be sloppy. You can do things right. You can still have your quality of life, all you're doing is taking a little bit of personal responsibility so that if the police are a little bit late, or if they don't come at all, or if the fire department is a little bit late, or it doesn't come at all, or if the utilities switch off for a day or a year, then you are ready.
You don't even feel it. I mean, we didn't. There was a lot of things that happened while we were out there for 6 years. We never even knew it. We didn't feel any power outages, no election. I didn't know that. Oh, now I'm going to embarrass myself. I don't even know his name. Obama, right?
Yeah.
No, he
The,
has
pre-
another
the,
name.
the president guy, yeah, that guy.
Yeah. What's his name? His first name?
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. We didn't know he was president until probably nine months after the fact, and I didn't know that he was, black or not white until maybe a year later. The Pope had died while we were there, and my wife, of course, is very Catholic. We didn't know that happened. So, when you're out there in this environment, you're self-contained. You're your own world. We had our own entertainment. We were responsible for our own security. I was our own police. I was on my own. Hospital. I stitched myself up a few times. I set my wife's bones and put a cast on her. So I mean, we did everything ourselves. The ranch, like you said, it's we're selling it for $99K. That's it. We put almost $1 million, about 820,000 into it. But we're just selling it for $100,000. I just want it to go to somebody that appreciates what we did and will enjoy it in the manner that we designed it to be. I don't want somebody to turn it into a cattle ranch and just destroy everything, So
now, speaking of what you have, you've mentioned that you've done relief work in disaster zones, and I'm sure that when you went to these places, the things that they did not have before the disaster, the tornado, the hurricane, the earthquake, whatever it was, I'm sure that must have stood out to you. And if nothing else, our fellow Americans can use that as a lesson when it comes to their own preparedness. So if you would please, I'd like you to dip into your memory here and talk about some of these places like Haiti that you've been to, and remember for us some of what are to us the most basic things in the world that they simply didn't have, that perhaps people don't have right now, that they could have if they go to Costco or they go to the grocery store or something. Because most of the people I know right now, the idea of just having a few extra cans on the shelf is alien to them. But they will, after they hear you talk about this, I think they'll take that a bit more seriously.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Haiti. Haiti is the number one poorest country in our hemisphere, and it's number 2 in the world before and after the earthquake. I've been to Haiti 3 times. I actually went just before the earthquake, about 3 months before the earthquake. I went a few days after the earthquake, and then I went again 1 year after the earthquake, which was about 6-8 months ago. And because they had a cholera outbreak, and we had to go back down again. So actually, a second catastrophe hit Haiti. Haiti's a very, very different place. I've been in Afghanistan, I've been in Iraq, I've been in Iran, and during the wars. And Haiti, I've been a lot of country. I've been to dozens and dozens of countries. And Haiti reminds me of a war zone before and after the earthquake. It just reminds me of a war zone. We always had to have several convoy vehicles of security in front of us and behind us. Everybody that any kind of relief organization that's down there, like Red Cross, Croix Rojo, China Relief.
I'd just like to point out one thing. You have to have this kind of armed and armored protection in a place like that because you have food. They're not interested in killing you for religious reasons.
No.
They want the food. And anybody who thinks that can't happen, even here in the United States, really needs to stop and think, because we live in a world where the just-in-time supply chain means that the roll of toilet paper, the prescription meds, and the can of soup don't stay on the shelf for more than 72 hours, which means if the truck doesn't come and 72 hours passes, you got an empty shelf. You don't get no more of those things, and after a while, people get desperate.
Yeah, we actually had generators, water pumps, compost toilets, and solar panels, and something else that I don't remember. I think batteries or something. And that's what we had. That's what we were carrying. But yeah, like some of these other relief, they have food and water and whatnot. Well, back to what I was saying, before the earthquake, Haiti was just, I don't know, whatever you can expect from the second poorest country in the world. It was just, it looked like a war zone. I mean, people lived in shacks that were falling down, and it was just rough. People, there's sewage on the roads that were dirt roads. There's no concrete roads. No, they had running water at one time. I want to say like 50 years or more ago. But I guess, just eventually it just degraded and failed, and the government never fixed it. So they have like indoor plumbing and pipes and stuff running to different buildings, but none of it works. So everything, they kind of just rerouted it onto the street. As far as like pantries full of food or cabinets full of food, they don't even have cabinets or pantries or refrigerators. Actually, that's one of the biggest problems, is there's no refrigeration in Port-au-Prince. So all the food, all the fruit, and all the meats come straight from the fields. And if you don't buy them and eat them that day, they go bad. And so there's no storage of any kind because there's really no refrigeration. And then after the earthquake, we went there, and it was just complete chaos. You couldn't even get anything done. There wasn't even any kind of potential for relief work. It was just, saving lives kind of things. And they wouldn't even let us in for that kind of adventure.
Now, you make a good point here about the whole refrigeration thing, so I just want to take the opportunity here. Being the showman that I am, I want to point out that if people buy your book, they can find out what you can do to live without refrigeration. We have people here in the interior of Alaska that have never had refrigeration, and they do just fine.
Just preservation. Yeah. Yeah, everything's in the book. It's funny because the book is 300 pages. It's a full 8 by 11.5, and it's packed, like you said, with pictures and information. And I could have kept going. I mean, there's just so much. All the other guides I have on the website are everything else I couldn't get in the book, and they're just like $3 or $4 or $5 each. I mean, they're nothing. They're just to cover the cost of the website. So yeah. So a year later, we went back, and 92% or 93% of the rubble was still there 1 year later. And we went back for the cholera outbreak, so it had nothing to do with the earthquake. But 92 or 93% of the rubble hadn't been touched. It's not like 9/11 when 3 days later, they're out there removing all the evidence and all the debris. A year later, 93% still there, which means that 93% of the bodies are still under the rubble. They haven't been touched. They haven't been found. And the 7% that has been moved and taken away wasn't to find bodies or to save lives. It was because some new company came in and bought that lot, had to clear it to build a new building. That was the simple fact of it. Yeah, and then you go to the other side of the island, which is Dominican Republic, and it's a first world country. It's a developing nation. It's a complete black and white. Actually, the number one provider of relief and funding to Haiti was Dominican Republic. Number 2 was China. Number 3 was Japan. Number 4 was Mexico, Brazil, and I think we were second to last or third to last. We didn't provide too much help down there. And when we went back the second time, I wanted to note this also. I don't know if you remember, but you see these places called tent cities that all the inhabitants of Haiti and Port-au-Prince were moved into these temporary housing villages that are made out of tents in these big fields. There's thousands of tents, and there's almost 100 tent cities. I think there was 80 different tent cities. And they're still in those temporary tent cities, which is actually better than their original living conditions were. They actually have running water in these tent cities, and they still have crates and sea vans of food showing up and bottled water. And so we went in there to kind of, interview some people and give some relief to the orphans and to the kids. We brought toys and coloring books and some candy and stuff. And we went into they brought us back into some of their family tents. And everybody has a cell phone. They all have cell phones. And they have like little plasma TVs, like little, flat screen TVs. But they all have like lawn chairs, if they have that. The plastic chairs is their furniture, and a cardboard box for a table, and a little camp fire pit, that they just dug out of the dirt floor and put some wood in there in the middle for cooking. But they all have, you got to have your cell phone and your TV.
That's one of the idiosyncrasies that you point out in your book, is that we have technology built into our lives and we don't realize how integrated it is, or how much of a handicap it would be when those things don't function anymore. And if you would, I would like to, where have you been in the world where there was no cell phone, where there was no real technology to speak of, and yet the people still managed to get by somehow?
Mm-hmm. The only place I've been to Africa and India, which are some of the less developed countries, but the only place I've been where there was no technology at all, well, I shouldn't say that because they did have something, but was a little village it was called Iquitos, Peru. It was just outside of Iquitos, Peru, and it was in the Amazon rainforest. We had to drive up the Amazon River for about 2 days, and then we had a bunch of Peruvians trek our equipment up to these little villages, and and some of these villages, they have nothing at all. But the village that we went to had an old World War II generator that had powered some light, a couple lights, and a radio, and it had failed. It's been 60, 70 years. And the Red Cross, I think it was Red Cross, actually brought us in to put some solar panels on, because they had these Amazonian, they weren't even Peruvian, they were Amazonian Indians, had formed this dependency on this generator. And, so we went in and put some solar panels up for them. But that would be the closest place I would say that would have nothing. Some of these other villages of these Amazonian Indians, they don't have any contact with any other white man or any kind of technology. They've never seen anything. I've seen pictures of these Indians, like they saw a helicopter or something and they're trying to throw spears at it and stuff. So they just don't understand the concept. But I don't see that lasting for very long. That's a very short lifespan on that. Technology is going to it's going to rule the world in every corner of it, and like you said, we're completely and utterly dependent on it. So that if something were to happen, God forbid, but if something were to happen where it took out, say the electrical grid, like it just did a couple months ago up in New York area for, 3 weeks or something, they had a heat spell, took out the grid, and they had no electricity for like 2.5 weeks. And then the electric company came back and said, okay, we found the problem, but it's going to take another 2.5 weeks before we can fix it. They were almost a month up there, and nobody made a big deal about it. Like the news coverage didn't. So, can you imagine a month without ATM machines, without cell phones, without computers, everything just shuts down. No refrigeration. Your stores don't have a refrigeration, so nothing's getting preserved. Toilets don't even flush because the water pumps aren't pressure anymore. Most of the remember the old towns that have the big ball of water in the middle of the town that has gravity fed to all the houses? Most cities don't have that. It's all electrical pumps now. So the sewage is all electrical pumps.
You make a good point. Now, so drawing on your background as an engineer, you've put a lot of different scenarios in your book when basically talking about the different levels of a failure in infrastructure. And now there is, in the first half of your book, I think, a very good chronology of the different sorts of catastrophe, apocalypse, end of the world scenarios, that we have become familiar with over the last several hundred years. And that's got some interesting historical value to it because, as I page through it, one of the things that I notice is that as people got more and more educated, as they got further and further away from superstition, they start putting aside things like various prophecies and the like. And you can say, on the one hand, that that's good, but I noticed that there is an easily documentable trend here in what you've cited, that there's so much more faith put in technology that when we get to the second half of your book and you talk about the scenarios that involve technical failure, whether it's just a simple cell phone outage or anything else, that it seems like in spite of all of our education, simply because of a lack of preparedness, we're more vulnerable than we were, say, a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have so many technical, not to mention nuclear, our nuclear inventions and nanotechnology. They talk about gray goo that could just, these nanobots gone awry that just turn everything into a gooey mess. All of our structures, everything we built just is goo. Viruses that we invent and create, these huge colliders out in Europe and one in California, I think one's in Ohio, where we're trying to discover the Big Bang. So yeah, there's a lot of different technological occurrences, not to mention natural, like asteroids and Planet X and super hurricanes and super volcanoes, super earthquakes.
Now, I myself am not a believer in the 2012 Mayan prophecy. As a matter of fact, I have a standing date with a group of my friends, and it's going to be a very late night for all of us because on December 21st, everybody comes to my house. They're going to eat my steak, they're going to drink my beer, and we're going to have a toast at midnight and move on. And while it's all fine and well for me to poke fun at this, I will still be doing all of this with some degree of general low-level preparedness in the background, because while I can laugh at superstitious natives several thousand years ago, I still have to live with the fact that we have a just-in-time supply chain that could fail, and as you mentioned earlier, in a heat wave, we have a national electrical grid that can decide it doesn't want to play anymore.
Right. When I first started writing the book, I have no experience, like you said, in any kind of metaphysical aspect, spiritual. I'm not religious at all. I have no. I don't follow Nostradamus' teachings or all that in the book. I had to do great research just to put it in the book. And it's funny though, because the more I researched it, the more I realized that a lot of these dates and beliefs coincide to the day with a lot of the scientific dates that they're forecasting. Like NASA forecasted on December 21st, 2012, the biggest solar flare known is going to erupt and probably cause massive outages. The last time this happened was early September 1859, I think. And the only kind of technology we had then was what's it called?
Probably would have been the telegraph.
Yeah, the telegraph system. And we didn't have electrical lines. We didn't have all this technology, everything in hospitals is all electrical. Everything we run on is electrical now. But the whole telegraph system completely burnt up. It just sparks, fire, everything. And that was from the flare in September 1859. A bigger flare is going to happen, supposedly NASA predicts, in December 21st, 2012. And it's amazing because when I came back to society, I left about 10 years ago, and I came back about almost 5 years ago. And when I left, I was watching the news, and you'd see tornado warnings and hurricane, tropical storm warnings, and this kind of stuff. And they have a scale for it. I don't know what it is for tornadoes, T1 tornado or something, and the hurricane is a category 2 hurricane or whatever. And when I came back, I started watching news again, and they have now these rating systems for these solar storms, these solar flares. And that's in my trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer, you can do a search, Apocalypse, How to Survive a Global Crisis trailer. It's on YouTube. And there's video clips of these news reports of, okay, this Monday we're going to have a big solar flare and this area is going to be knocked out. Your grid is going to go offline. So if this happens on a normal basis now monthly, and there's going to be a huge one in 2012, it's very suspicious how these things are all lining up. So the more I wrote the book, the more I researched, the more I started believing in these dates, and I don't think that the Mayans or the Hopi, who actually have the same prediction dates, I don't think that they were magical or spiritual or mythical, or I don't think this stuff is magic. I think that they were just time record keepers. Somebody told them that this happened on this date 1,000 years ago. It happened again on this date 1,000 years later. It happened again when we were recording time, which was on this date 1,000 years later. So in 1,000 years, which is when you're going to have the calendar, it's going to happen again. So the Hopi and the Mayan come along and they say, okay, it did happen again. Wow, you guys are great predictors. So since it happened 5 times already, we're going to predict that it's going to happen again in 1,000 years. And that's what I think that the Mayan calendar is. It's not some message from God and I don't think that the Bible, I might be completely wrong, but I don't think the Bible is a message from God, telling us of revelation and the 4 horsemen. I think it's stuff that is not mythical. It's all scientific. It's all logical, thinking, but they told it in a way to get the information out there and keep it going. But I might be wrong. It might be a message from God. I don't know.
Now, speaking of getting the information out there, I'd like to point out that if people go to your website, apocalypsethebook.com, they can click on the link and they can have a look at your blog. As I'm looking at it now, I can see the notations of your various media appearances. There's some stuff here on Agua Luna. So there's a lot going on here that people can come and have a look at. And I'm just curious to know how open to public contact you are, since we're talking about the blog. How easy is it for people to get a hold of you if they want to?
Yeah, anybody can email me. I get emails, probably close to 100 a week easily, and I try to respond to all of them and answer any question. A lot of questions. Everybody asking anything from how do you do this to what are you doing now, So I really try to answer the questions. If I can't, I have an assistant that really, is a lot of help, and she gets a lot of information out there. So yeah, you can email me through either website, or my email is Martin at Martin@agua-luna.com, or I have Twitter. I'm on Facebook. So the publicist and the publishing company did a lot of hard work to get me in close with the people that I'm not one of these persons where you can't contact them. I'm right there, with the people and trying to help them and get the information out there and get them through this.
This program is brought to you by ShadowFusionBooks.com.
We were talking a second ago about the different types of possible events. I would like to tell you my personal belief of what might happen. And this is just based strictly on again, it's nothing mystical, magical. It's just based on how often this occurs. In 2000, I think it was in 2000, Discover Magazine published a list of 20 likely unexpected scenarios that would bring on a sudden kind of doomsday-like environment. And number 1 on that list was asteroid impact. And it's not because it's in all the movies and it's the most feared one. It's just because it's the one that happens the most. It happens. An asteroid as big enough to wipe out a complete city happens every 10 years. And now, because most of the world is inhabited, They just land in fields or in the ocean or in glaciers. But if one of those were to hit anywhere in the United States, especially in the eastern half of the United States, it would wipe out. I mean, millions and millions of people would die from it. So that's my prediction. I have great extensive information in the book about how many asteroids hit, how often they hit, where they've hit. I have a huge list of every asteroid that's hit in the last 100 years or that in our in our lifespans, but they go back tens of thousands of years, millions of years. Not to mention the Tunguska event in 1908, where the whole area was completely devastated. If that meteor, which was about as big as a bus, hit Pennsylvania, say, it would wipe out New York, Ohio, Michigan, Chicago, Boston, Connecticut, and that size meteor happens every 100 years. So there's different size meteors. There's meteors that are small that could wipe out a town or half a town that happen every night. Then there's a little bit bigger ones that happen every year, and a little bit bigger that could take out a whole city every 10 years. And the one that could take out multiple cities or half a country happens every 100 years. And that one happened in 1908. It's 2012. So, we're about due for that.
I'd like to go into the final minutes of the program here by talking about something that means a lot to me, and that's the whole business of actually writing a book. I run into people all the time who have really good stories, or they've accumulated a lifetime of professional information. But they've always got some reason why they can't do it. It's Tuesday, or I'm no good, or somebody won't like this, or something. There's any number of reasons. But as I'm looking at your bio and your information here, this book is something that you worked with Echo House Publishing to produce. This is ECKO. That's Echo House Publishing. You can find them at echohousepublishing.com. And I would like you to tell us about your publishing experience. You're obviously still here. I'm going to guess you still have all your fingers and toes, so I don't think it was probably that hard.
No. Right now, there's a big movement in what they call self-publishing. It's really not self-publishing. It has nothing to do with you publishing yourself. It's just a publishing company that's willing to publish pretty much any book. There's some guidelines and there's some restrictions. They won't accept anybody, but you don't have to really, like typically a normal publishing company, you have to you have to sell your book to them. Really push it, and you have to have a great book, and you probably have to already be a known author. And so these big publishing houses that pay for everything, all the advertising, all the publicity, all the placement in bookstores, all your marketing, you really have to, the normal first time author really has very little chance of getting picked up by a mainstream publishing company. But there are all these littler publishing companies like Eco House and some other ones that basically say, if you have a decent book and you're not breaking any laws by writing it, you incur all the costs. You pay for your publicity, your marketing, your advertising, your book placement. You do all the legwork, and we will publish it and print it. And they got different packages. Some will do give you Facebook and online marketing, and a little bit of blasts out to some different radio and TV channels. But basically, you incur all the costs, and that's the difference between a publisher and a mainstream publisher takes a percentage out of each book, and a self-publishing company doesn't. You got the full rights to it, and you get the ISBN number, and you get the full profit, which doesn't much matter to me. 100% of my profits go back into the nonprofit organization. So
So now,
It didn't
what
really
was the
matter.
hardest part about the actual writing of the thing? I spend a significant amount of my time every year mentoring young writers and helping them get past everything from writer's block to trauma. Some of these guys and gals are traumatized by the spell check function on their computers, and it happens. So, what's been the
Yeah.
hardest part about the actual writing for you?
Uh, I would probably have to say the technological side of it. I had a lot of problems with. At one time I had like 6 chapters done, and then something happened with the program or something. It just messed everything up, and luckily I had backups and stuff. But then sending it to the editor, and they have a different program, so it converts it, and we lost stuff, and that's just a nightmare. There should be a much easier way to to actually write the book. I had no problem with writer's block. Because I wasn't creating anything. And I think if you're creating things, you're making up a story where it has to be creative and funny and enlightening and fun to read, then you might have writer's block, block creating things. But basically I was just documenting down all my experiences, and it was just a matter of remembering everything. And I had taken a lot of notes in all my experiences and all my projects and documented them pretty good. So it was just a matter of putting it in formatting. There was a time when, it's just kind of a funny story, but at the time I was kind of jumping around different countries, staying in a lot of hotels, doing lectures and speaking events while I was writing this book. It took me 1 year to actually write the book. And I was in a hotel somewhere, I think in Paris or Madrid, and I could swear that people in suits and sunglasses were following me. And I thought, my book isn't, I talk a lot of bad stuff about the government and about society and about the military. So, I don't think that I'm doing very well staying off anybody's radar, but I didn't think I was big enough for anybody to follow me. I thought I was being, paranoid. But I told my wife, who goes everywhere with me, we haven't been separated not one time in 10 years. Not for 5 minutes. So she was with me. I told her, I think somebody's following us. And she said, you're being paranoid. It's just your book, the research you're doing on your book. It make you paranoid. I said, yeah, you're right. But for the next few months, I always thought somebody's following me. Nothing ever happened. But and then she was the first person I gave it to read before it went to the editor, because I'm a horrible writer. I'm not a writer. So my words and my language is just horrible. So she had to write it and kind of restructure it so that the editor would kind of comprehend what I'm saying. And she read the whole book, and she started saying to me, this was about a year later, she started saying to me, I think somebody's following us. I think somebody's following us. So I don't know if the book did it to us, but it's got to be a pretty good book when the person that wrote it is getting freaked out by what he wrote himself, or maybe somebody's following us. I don't know.
Well, see. So, now, just out of curiosity, what's next? And now that you have this behind you, what's next for Dan Martin?
I got 2 more books in the work right now. I'm actually almost finished with the second one, which is basically, if nothing happens, which would be great, within the next year or 2, then how you can just be a little bit more self-sufficient and green, eco-friendly in your own place without doing anything. Just, switching out your light bulbs for LED, maybe putting a solar panel on the roof, maybe using some composting, maybe little water catchment systems, maybe some natural heating and cooling, just to lower your bills, maybe lower your fuel costs by making a little bit of your own fuel. Right now, you're using ethanol in your fuel. Every fuel pump in the United States has at least 15% ethanol. You'll see the sticker on every pump now. So if you can make it a little bit, 15%, add it to your tank, you don't even have to pay for it. So just kind of how to save a little bit of money and do some stuff yourself. The next book, which should be out next year, 2013, is basically do what I did. If you just want to leave society and get an off-grid place, be it in the United States and Mexico and some other country, how to do what we did, how to just get up and leave society and have a permaculture, completely off the grid, self-sufficient place. And those 2 will be out in the next couple of years. I just bought a animal preserve in East Texas So as soon as we're done down here in Mexico, I will probably move back up into East Texas and get the animal preserve going. I'm going to spend a lot more time with animals now. And if you read the back part of my book, you saw that everything I say about animals and why the whole book is dedicated to animals and how we're currently treating animals and the other natural life on this planet. And that's what I'm going. That's the direction we're going in now.
Thanks very much to Dan Martin for being on the show today, and also special thanks to Echo House Publishing for providing me with a review copy of this book. You can find them online at eckohousepublishing.com. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to find us online at politicsandpatriotism.com. Click on the contributors button, scroll down, find the email address for the presenter that you'd like to correspond with, start typing, and we'll get back to you just as soon as we can. So on behalf of everyone here at the show, thank you for your time and have a good day.